I'm Gabe. I'm from Meadow, Utah. Yeah.
Meadow, that's not right. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna get behind the computer in just a minute, but before we get really started, can you guys usually hear? Is it any public hearing when Bob's over here? Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's kind of hard to hear if you guys could either be closer to the mic or turn up the gain or whatever.
yeah, I'm gonna move in a minute. So here's the layout for what we're gonna do with info classes. Right now, we still teaches the meeting stack. However, there are a bunch of libraries and frameworks that are growing in popularity. React is one of them. It's getting a lot of steam, and its rise in popularity is about as fast as Angular was back in 2007. 2007? When it first came out. Anyway, it's going really fast. So our goal, or my goal, is not to make you guys specialists in React. When we're done, your Angular skills should still be far, far, far beyond your React skills. But my objective is to help you guys get a basic understanding of how React works. We're not going to make any, like, at the end of the fourth class, I want us to be able to make a to-do app using a data management tool called MobX. So it's really pretty simple. And you guys can make a to-do app in Angular in 3 minutes. You know, it's like ng model, and then scope that whatever. You can do it pretty fast. With React, there's a lot of more complicated. So anyway, that is the objective. We want you guys to be familiar with how it works. What is different? It's a completely different paradigm. So we're going to be doing these very different from Angular. And I really welcome questions. Chances are, this is why all news to you guys, because it's really but if you have a question, chances are half the class has that question. So just speak up, and we'll do our best. I'll do our very best to help you guys understand. Like I said, so here's the plan for the rest of tonight's class. We're going to go from 6 to 9. And tonight is going to be kind of slow because we're going to be talking about React. Before we dive into code, I want you guys to understand why it's different and how it's different. And compared to Angular, getting started with React is much more difficult. With Angular, all you have to do is throw on a CDN, and throw on a CDN the script tag. Throw your links in, throw some script tags to link to your JS files, and you're good. React is more complicated, and there's some pain points. So my goal tonight is just for you guys to have some understanding about components, how they work, and how we get started with React. So that's going to be kind of slow. If you guys can do it tonight, the next class is going to be more enjoyable. Any questions yet? Okay, cool.
All right.
Can you guys online hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, much better.
Okay, all right. So in, where is it? You guys are the students January, right?
Yep.
Okay. I posted a bunch of links earlier. I think I did. Maybe I put it in the wrong one.
Yeah, I don't see them.
I did. Okay, I'm going to post a bunch of links that we're going to work through tonight. The goal is for us to be able to get through as many of these as possible.
Cool.
How many of you guys are we all in the January class here?
No, some of us are
February. Okay. All right. So we're going to go over some stuff that might be, okay. Here's a litmus test. Who's familiar with the .map array method? Okay. All right. So we're going to, all right. So here's some things that we need to know, and we're going to go over. So we're not going to go in depth, but we're going to learn about using events as parameters. So like when you know how when you add an event listener, so let's say like you're going to have a button dot add event listener click. So events are actually objects. And so some of the things that we're going to be doing is using events as parameters where you actually pass an event in. So like, you have a function and its only parameter or one of its parameters is actually an event. And array.map. Array.map is really easy. It just takes an array and it passes each item in the array into a function. So for example, here we have this array of numbers that's 1 through 5, and then we map. So we say nums.map, and it passes each of these items into that function, and it creates a new array with the result. And React uses the map method a good deal. That's how we make lists. Blah, blah, blah. All this information is on here, so I'm not going to go through it super in depth. For each, is everyone familiar with the for each method? It's just like running a loop, but you pass in a function, and just like map, it passes each item into the array. I'm sorry, into the function. So we have this is just like a regular loop here. And here we're saying numbers for each function and just console log it out. Again, you can read through this and it's pretty straightforward. Would it be helpful to do an example of this?
Yes.
Okay. So let's do a format. I'm going to say var nums equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to say var doubles equals nums.map. And I'm going to pass in a function. And I'll say like num. And I'm going to say return num times 2. So here's how this works. Nums is the array, and I pass in this function to this map. So I say nums.map. And what map does is it loops through this array, and it passes each item into this function as this parameter. So what I can do here is I'm going to do console.log num. And this is going to return a new array. So now I'm going to say console.log doubles. So I'm going to run node scrap.js. Wait, let me see what main.js. Psych, what is going on? This is really touchy. Can't go up a little bit. Never mind. I'm going to go over to the regular console. Okay, so what it did was, in this function, it looped through, and you can see that this was passed in to each one, and then it returned the value doubled. That's what map does. It returns a new array, and it performs whatever logic you want on the map. So I can change this to a for each. For each is just a loop, and it does not return a new array. It just mutates the existing array. So here we have nums.forEach. And so by default, this first parameter, I'm gonna repeat this like 3 times. In map and for each, these are super useful functions. For both of these, it iterates through the array and it passes the item into this function. That's all it does. So the first, in both for each and map, the first parameter is always the item in the array that you iterate through. So it's going to go loop 1, pass in 1 to this function, loop 2, pass in here. And the second one is by default always the index. Those are the two parameters that you can pass in. So here, I'll say, now I can run this. Oh wait, it doesn't know what that is. Let's see, console log nums. Oh wait, I was gonna do something. Say console log num times 2. So we pass in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it just doubles it.
So it didn't actually change the nums array though?
No, this one I didn't. If you wanted to, we could say, we'll say num at the index of index equals, sorry, nums, num times 2. So this would effectively double it. So let's look at what's happening here. Now that I changed it using the for each method, it runs this function on each item in the array, and I'm passing in the item and the index of where it's found. And then I'm assigning at that index, it's going to equal the original value times 2. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I'm going to go back to the console that works. I get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
Cool.
Any questions about, okay, map and for each? We good? What does dot map return? A new array. Okay, good. That's all. That's what we need to know. All right, sweet. Okay, I'm not going to worry about any more right now. We're just going. I just wanted to make sure that those are clear. I can't close this. There you go. Okay, so intro to React. Why don't we just, who can tell me, what do you guys know about React? Can anybody tell me like anything they know? What's your name?
Brennan?
Brennan.
Yeah, so React is a library.
Yeah. Okay, I want to emphasize what you said. Brennan just said that React is a JavaScript library. What's the difference between a library and a framework?
So a library, so a library is basically like a set of like it's like already written code that you can use in like that my JavaScript uses or something like that.
Sure. You know, that's there's lots of answers to that question. But I like that you said it's a library. Libraries are generally less opinionated, and a framework kind of requires you to stick to a set of rules. And so React is pretty unopinionated. Does anybody else know anything about it? You look like you're gonna say something. No? Okay. Do you guys know who made React? Facebook. Okay, so React it's really lightweight, and React works on a pretty different paradigm. React does not, so there's a few major differences between Angular and React. One of the major differences between Angular and React is that React emphasizes one-way data flow. What that means is in Angular you can have an ng model, and you can have a scope variable, and you can bind them. You can bind them, and anytime one changes, the other one automatically changes. However, in React, there's no two-way data binding. Everything has a one-way data flow. let me see, where's, is someone playing the piano? Oh, okay, cool. So the way React works is that if let's say there's an input, and what this does is, let's say you just have an input box. What happens is, and this is your value. Let's say this is my var text. What this does is, this is going to fire off an event, like an on change. So you know how you have ng change or on change? This is going to fire off an event, and it's going to have some data inside of it. And then it's going to say, hey, every time this changes, send this event and update this variable. And then you have to say, hey, take data. So this is now changed. We're going to update the view and change what it looks like. Now this is in contrast to what we're familiar with, where we have, an ng model. I haven't written with one of these in a while, and it's kind of hard. ng model equals text, and this is scope.text, except that should be capitalized, and they're just automatically bound. With React, we're going to have to manually say, we actually have to write functions that do all of this. Angular does a lot of the heavy lifting for us, and React, we have to go through and we have to code this whole process. Now that might seem like, when I started doing React, I was like, man, this sucks. Every time I have to write a function, 1 or 2 functions for every little piece of data. That's a lot of coding. I was writing more code with React than I was with Angular. I'm like, this is really kind of stupid. And it's kind of annoying. But there are benefits to doing this. Even though if you're writing just vanilla, straight up React, you end up writing more code. There's a security in that, because the Angular has a digest cycle. And that is what keeps your scope and your ng models and your injections all up to date, right? And I worked on projects where we had to go in and break the digest cycle so that we could do what we wanted to do. But with React, because of this one-way data flow, this means that there are no side effects. That every time that you do one thing, it only does one thing, and you can't break it because it only does one thing. And there's another benefit to all of this, is that with Angular and with it has to manage its own state, and it has to remember all of its current values. So let me say that differently. Let's say that I start up a page. I have to go through, and it might have to run certain functions. In order to get the view that I want, I have to do a lot of checking, like if this, then that, if this, then that. Or like the logic to get a page onto the site is a bit more complex. But with React, this creates a really simple structure, and you guys will see this as we progress, that your UI is a direct result of your data. Maybe that doesn't make sense yet, but we're going to see what that looks like. Because so whatever your data is, your UI is automatic. So anyway, this means I remember hearing this. I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? It didn't make any sense. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. But there's one more thing I want to talk about with React. And React uses something called the virtual DOM. So if we come back over here, how does React work? There's 2 pieces to React that make it kind of this beautiful tool. There's React and there's React DOM. So I'm going to go through and let me see, Control New, don't save. So what Facebook did is they created React was originally one library. They have React, and React creates components. So you guys have been using Angular, right? And you got to, who can tell me, like, in your own words, what is a component? What's your name again? Ben. What's a component?
Basically just one sort of specific module or like functionality, like a login form or like an app bar, something that has like a very specific functionality.
Yeah.
Self-contained.
That's exactly what I was looking to hear. So a component is a self-contained element that has its own design and functionality. So in H1, if you just have an H1, like this has built-in styling, like a font size and a padding and margin and all that. Like it has all this stuff built in. So a component is a self-contained piece of code that has its own HTML, JavaScript, and CSS built into it. So React builds these components, and what it uses, it creates a virtual DOM. So, okay, who can tell me what the DOM is? What is, in your own words, what's the DOM? I forgot your name. Plaid shirt. Yeah. What is the DOM? This is kind of important. This is important to know, to understand when, because we're going to be like, why does that happen? And this is Renan.
So it's the sense for a document object model, right?
Yeah.
It basically, so like your document, like your code communicates with like refers to, I guess, like your web page, your object.
Yeah.
And if you go back, like, so if you change your document, then it changes your object.
Exactly. So, do you guys know what happens when you write HTML? When you write HTML and it sends it to the browser, what does the browser do with it? Do you know what the browser does with it? There's a reason that this is called the document object model, because HTML, which stands for hypertext markup language, it literally turns that into an object. So HTML is just another way to write out an object. And lots of languages, so like there's actually a programming language called Cold Fusion, and it looks like HTML, but it compiles to Java. So you can write Java, like full-on programs, in what looks like HTML, because it literally just converts it to an object in its code. So your HTML literally gets turned to this object, that has values and properties and values, properties and values, properties and values. So what the virtual DOM does, React takes your code and it turns it into this model. We're going to say parent child, parent child. Let's say this is a node, and it creates a virtual. This becomes the virtual DOM. We're going to say VD, and this is not what gets rendered on your screen. So it says, hey, it keeps a digital track of what your data looks like, and then it sends that to the browser. So it maintains two versions of your code. So do you guys remember this little cycle that we said, like, hey, it does this, and then it does this, and then it does this? The virtual DOM works right here. Let's say that we have a to-do list, and we're gonna add a new node right here. What we do is, so our code would say, hey, we added a new to-do item, and this changed, and this changed. With Angular and jQuery, it would have to re-render this whole object. It takes the whole object and it manipulates the whole thing. But React is smart, and the slowest thing about JavaScript and web development is rendering the DOM. That's the slowest thing that JavaScript can do. Manipulating, changing this right here is the slowest thing that we can do. That's the slowest thing right here. So in terms of like memory consumption and code, changing this is the hardest thing that we're going to do, and it's going to slow down our users' experience. So what Facebook did is they said, hey, we don't need to re-render this whole thing. All I have to do is re-render this and this. So we say, so it compares the virtual DOM to what's actually on the screen. And it says, hey, this right here is what changed. Only change this right here. Does that make sense? And that's what the virtual DOM does. So every time that our data changes, it doesn't go immediately to change our view. So if I click on a button, if the data doesn't change, it doesn't re-render. And that is the beauty of React. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah, Ben.
Could you go to that cycle one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what we're gonna here. Don't save. So the way that React works is we have events, and events fire off functions. So like an on click, an on change. Those are the big ones, right? On click, on scroll, whatever, right? It fires off this function. So this function, it will change our data. And then our data is compared to the virtual DOM. And then it changes our UI. Let's say like UI/event. And then this is changes. So that might seem kind of common sense because you think like, oh, sure, I fire off a function, I add something, but the goal for tonight is to make a little counter. We're going to make a little plus minus counter, and you guys are going to see that we have to manually control our data. So how would this differ from Angular? I would typically write a function that would update this, and then I'd write another function that does this. So I'd have to manually edit every piece of data. So I have more control, but so one of the downsides is it might take a little bit of time. Does that make sense? Any questions? Oh, go ahead.
The difference, with vanilla JavaScript, let's say, it's the main difference, with vanilla JavaScript, you would have to wait for the whole thing to re-render every single time.
Yeah, that's.
And then React basically is just checking the incoming change to what already exists. Is that the main difference?
That actually, you asked a good question. So you said, let me give you an example. Let's say that we have a to-do list, and this is our input, right? So we're just going to write our stuff in here. In vanilla JavaScript, every time that I wanted to add an item, I would literally have to write my code so that I destroy everything, and then I would have to re-render. There are other ways to do it. That's not completely true. There are some exceptions, but you would, in one way or another, you'd have to destroy all of this and then re-render it. With Angular, your input, it keeps track of this, and it'll just as soon as your data changes, it automatically updates your view. But if there's an error or if something happens, there are times when updating the view is slower, and you can end up re-rendering your whole list. And with React, if your data changes, let's say this, all of this re-renders. With React, the only thing that changes
is this aspect of the document model. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
It just takes out the one little part that changed and then just does that.
yeah.
Kind of similar how, is that kind of similar how it actually works?
Yeah, you know, actually that's a good point. Kind of, it keeps track of changes.
Yeah, it keeps track of like different versions. It doesn't really track
Yeah, that's,
changes. It takes like snapshots of the entire thing at one time and then compares the incoming snapshot to the last snapshot.
kind of what all that Git does is just it tracks changes. That's the only thing it tracks. And then as you add changes or whatever, then it'll make it part of it. Yeah, so Git just tracks changes, and that's actually pretty, so that's kind of what the virtual DOM does. It just tracks changes and updates only the changes. Here's an example. Mark Zuckerberg said like, had a pretty good little example. Let's say like if you go on Facebook, you have your little message icon, and they say like you have like one message or like two messages. And their problem was like, what if you go down here to your little message thing and you read, let's say you read this message. Like before, it took a lot of code and they couldn't get this to change. You had to like refresh the page to take this from 2 to 1. And so what Facebook did is said, hey, every time that this happens, I want this to change. And you can do that with Angular. Like obviously you can do that with Angular, but there were some challenges to it. So anyway, now if you've read this, it automatically updates all of your data, and this automatically gets changed to 1 or then 0. Again, you can do all of this with Angular. React is not necessarily an inherently better tool. It's not just better. It's a different approach, and it kind of solves different problems. So let's go back. Any questions? Okay, so this is mostly, I'm not gonna lie, I think this is kind of boring stuff, but I want to start getting into actually writing some code. Okay, so we're intro to React. The main thing that we need to know is the virtual DOM. Okay, intro to Webpack. Okay, so who's using brackets and who's using, oh, blast, WebStorm? Raise your hand if you're using brackets. Okay, raise your hand if you're using WebStorm. Okay, I'm going to use brackets because more people are using it. Yes?
Yeah, I'm a WebStorm user too, but we can switch to either. Do you just want us all to work in brackets together then?
Yeah. Do you guys, for people who are on WebStorm, do you have brackets installed?
Yeah.
Okay. WebStorm is, I highly recommend if you guys, there's a learning curve, but learning WebStorm is a really good decision. I'm also going to throw a shout out for Visual Studio Code. We do have, I wrote a little configuration thing for it. Visual Studio Code is the bomb. Completely free, and I've run into plenty of performance issues with brackets, and Visual Studio Code has become, I don't know if it's surpassed Sublime, but it's a really popular editor, and I can send you the link to set it up. So cool. One of the things about React, one of the paradigms of Angular and React is that Angular puts JavaScript into our HTML. In JavaScript, in Angular, we can actually put, 2 + 2 inside of our curly braces, and Angular will evaluate this just like JavaScript. Does that make sense? Has anybody ever done that? Like injected like JavaScript or like things to be resolved? Yeah. So you could put like if, 2 = 2, return whatever, right? And so you can actually put stuff straight in here. And that is amazing. I actually love that. I love me some two-way data binding. React uses something called JSX. Has anybody ever heard of JSX? So JSX is the exact opposite of this. Instead of putting JavaScript into our HTML, React uses JSX, and we put HTML into our JavaScript. And we're going to see what that looks like in just a minute. But one of the problems with this is that your browser cannot run JSX. So what we have to do is we have to use a tool called Babel to convert JSX into JavaScript. Who's heard of Babel? Miriam, can you tell me what Babel is in your own words? Yeah, okay. And not just JSX. It'll do TypeScript, Elm. It converts a whole bunch of different types of JavaScript into ES5. And we're going to see that pretty soon. Actually, I can show you. If you ever want to check it out, you can just go to, I think it's babeljs.io, and it will, it's like, try it out. And so you can see that, like let name. So you can type in, come on. So it's like let equals Tanner. Something that we're going to be looking at a lot is classes. So you say class person. It actually turns this into a function, a constructor function. Yes, what's your name? Simone.
It's not. I mean, this seems like it's taking all the learning out of how to write.
What? Oh, this? Oh, you can still write functions. This is just yeah. So this is ES6. So we're writing ES 2015 or ES6. And you still write functions like function, like print, like whatevs, like console log, whatevs. Like that doesn't change anything. But as a constructor function, like it does. Like so this is the ES6. Here's what's important right now is that Babel converts ES6 and JSX into ES5. That's all there is to it. That's what we need to know. But were you saying doing this kind of defeats the purpose of learning regular JavaScript? Yeah. So no. Actually, ES5, everything that you're learning will help you learn ES6. This doesn't replace what you learn. Actually, you can use this instead of it, but it doesn't both work. Actually, you can write React completely in ES5. There is a way to do it, but it's less common and less popular. And so this class is optional, but I'm going to be teaching and using new JavaScript features that right now might seem like, why the crap are you doing this? But I promise you, the more you use it, it is a better way to write JavaScript. For instance, arrow functions. Have you guys learned about arrow functions? Yeah. Okay, so Simone, you haven't learned about. Let's talk later. I'll show you. There's a few things. For instance, arrow functions are really important. Anyway, so Babel converts ES6 to ES5, and it can convert React into regular JavaScript. So when we're writing React, we have to use a tool to convert it. And the most popular tool out there is Webpack. Have you guys ever heard of Grunt or Gulp? What are Grunt and Gulp, Jay? Yeah, Jay said ways to include different packages. Yeah, so what, as a definition, they're called task runners. And what they do is they're builders. You configure Grunt or Gulp to run a bunch of tasks for you. So instead of writing out these really long tasks, you just say like, this short command is going to be equal this. And the most popular one for React is called Webpack. And we're going to start doing this right now. So in Node, the way this is, what this does is, so you guys know in Node how you can say like var express equals require express. And you can require dependencies. So if this, let's say like this is a dependency. You can say that this requires this. And let's say that this perhaps has its own dependency. And maybe this requires another thing. And maybe both of these require that. So you have a bunch of interrelated dependencies. And what happens is when you use Webpack, it comes in here and it recognizes that it recognizes how every file is required by another file. And it compiles it or it transpiles it into one single file. Typically it's called bundle. So you can have lots of really complicated dependencies. Like, you know, this might retrieve, like, and it can get, there's no limit to how complicated it needs to be. All you have to do is just require and make those dependencies, and Webpack will just follow these paths and put it all together for you. It's super simple. And here's the beautiful part about it is that this bundle, when it puts it out, this can run in the browser. So this can be React, and these can be all these different components, a component and a component and a component. This is a component. And when this by itself is not browser friendly. So what we have to do is we use Webpack. I can't spell, this is supposed to be a C. Webpack. And it spits out a new file called bundle. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that. So go ahead and take a minute and pull up I want you to go out to create a new folder. I call this just React class 1. And I'm going to create a new folder in here. I'm just going to call this Webpack practice. And we're going to go through this intro to Webpack course, or this. We're just going to go straight through this exercise. So to get started, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open a terminal and I'm going to run this command. I'm going to run, actually, I'll give you guys a minute. I'll give you guys a minute to get your structure ready.
Can you go back to where we can see it again? Thank you.
So all I want is a Webpack practice. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a new file with HTML or index.html. Raise your hand when you've done this. Okay. Are they always this loud downstairs? Man, because that's super annoying. Really? Are you serious? That's rough. I've only been here once before, and it was like super quiet. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to install Webpack on our machines as a node module. So I'm just going to run one command. I'm going to do npm install -g, which means global. So it's going to be available in all of my terminals. npm install -g. Okay. I just created a new folder called React Class 1.
But did you have to do this every time that you had a class? If you only put a class.
Oh, sure. I'm just for this, we're making a folder, and after this, you can delete this after you like. Or is that not your question? Oh, it doesn't. Oh yeah. You can do it globally. Yeah, when you're doing a global install, you can be in any folder. and it'll work. So I'm going to run npm install -g webpack, and it's going to install Webpack globally for me, and it'll take a minute. So now if I type Webpack, it says a configuration file is not found. And anyway, this just means that it is installed correctly. Raise your hand if you got this far. No? Is it still installing? Okay, only. All right. Does everybody have it? Who does not have it installed? What's your name again? Oh, sorry. Add this guy. Terry. Okay. Okay, got that? Perfect. That just means that it's installed. Okay, perfect. All right, so what we're going to do is I want you to go back and create your index.html, and I'm just going to copy and paste this HTML file and paste it in here. So we can see here in our body, all that we have is an empty h2 and a script tag for bundle.js. But here's the cool thing. We're not going to create bundle.js. We won't create that file. Webpack is going to create that file for us. So I'm going to create another file. Actually, here, I'll paste this in Slack so you guys can have it. Crap. In case you want it. And then I'm going to create two new files. I'm going to create a main.js and a sayhello.js. So I'm going to create these two files. What's that? No. Oh, yeah, I can. Here. Yeah, give me 1 second. Feb. All right, 1 second. Oh, come on. Boom. Okay. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to create two new files. This is going to be called main.js. And I'm going to create sayhello.js. Sayhello.js. So I'm going to copy this file. I'm just going to paste it into sayhello.js. And let's look at this. So all this file has is it exports a function. Okay, so all we're doing is we wrote a function and we're exporting it. And this function takes a name and an element. So this is kind of like saying, all this function kind of does is has like document dot get element by ID and then like dot inner HTML. It's kind of, it does kind of like this. Inner HTML. That's basically what we're doing. Equals whatever. Equals hello. So element dot text context equals hello this. So I'm going to go back to main.js. And I'm going to copy this file. I'm going to say, it says var say hello, and it's requiring this file. So here's what's important. This file is has a dependency, which is this file. So in Node, we know this, right? So when you guys do express servers, this is like common practice, right? You guys do. Who's writing express servers already? Oh, who's not writing express servers? Oh, so you haven't seen this before, have you? Oh, okay. All right. So let me explain what this is doing. So what this is doing is, okay, if you haven't seen this before, then I need to explain it. So in JavaScript, every file can become its own module. And so I can say that this file, I want to export something. And if I export something, that means another file can take it and use it. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to break my application into little pieces that can be maintained by themselves. So here, I could say, I could call this like function print name. And I could just export it, and I can say module.exports equals print name. And so now I wrote this function, and I can send it to another file, and they can use this code. So now if I go to this main.js, I can say var say hello equals require, and I give it the path. Like how does this file relate in position to the other one? So I say, and then, so here's the variable that I created, and it's a function. So I created it here, but I'm calling it in this file. So right now I'm gonna take this and I'm going to run it in the live demo. Can y'all hear me over that? All right, do I just need to project my voice louder? Is that, all right, I'm sorry. I'll try to talk a little louder. So right now, if I ran it, there's no, you can see there's nothing happening. It says bundle.js does not exist. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use Webpack to build a new file. I'm gonna tell it to use main.js as my entry point. So main.js, I'm gonna say this again, is my entry. And Webpack is gonna go in and find all of my dependencies. So this is a dependency. So in order for this code to function properly, it has to get the code from its dependency, which is this other file. And so I'm exporting this.print name. So it's module.exports equals print name. So Webpack is going to track down the dependency and is going to combine all of that code into one file. So I'm going to come into my console.
So wait a minute, does that mean you don't need the function?
I do need it. This is the function that I wrote, and then I'm sharing it right here. Is that so? Module.exports equals print name, and this is the function print name. Yeah.
So the original that we pasted in, though, was in a different format. Does that work as well, or do we need to break it into two pieces?
Oh, they both work. So what it was before was just I didn't have a name on it. It was an anonymous function.
Right.
So both are fine. This is shorter, but I changed it so that in case some of us here haven't used the module.exports function aspect before.
Yep.
So I think this is a little easier to understand if you haven't seen it before.
Okay.
But this is equally just fine.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go back to the console and I'm gonna use Webpack. I'm gonna say Webpack main. Oh wait, let me make sure I need to be in the folder. So I'm gonna say ls. Yeah. So I'm in this folder. I'm gonna go into Webpack. I need to go into Webpack practice. So I'm gonna cd. So I'm in the folder that has all my files. So make sure that you navigate into the folder that contains your files. And I'm gonna say, hey, start here. That's my entry point, and it's gonna snake its way through and find, do I still have it up? It's gonna find all of its dependencies and output a new file. So I'm gonna say Webpack main.js. This is my entry point, and I want you to create bundle.js. And bundle is a pretty common name. Sometimes you'll see index.bundle.js or bundle.js or index.bundle.js are the normal names. So I'm gonna run this file, run this command. And if I come back here, it created a new file. And oh, come on, let me close this. So Webpack created a new file. and it has all of my code in one file. So now if I come back and, yeah, sorry, I'm trying to find, where's the, oh, this is it. So this is the file. And a lot of times this file is not very readable. Sorry, Simone, what was that? I just clicked on the file. So now if I come back and if I refresh this page, now it says, hello, Tanner. So I want to repeat what happened here. This file is my entry point, and I told it to Webpack found all of the dependencies, smash them, put them all together in one file. Man, they're really loud. And put it out into one file. And here's the beauty of it. When we do this with React, we can tell it to transform. This is when we say, hey, while you're putting this all into one file, in that process, convert it from JSX, which is the React syntax, to regular JavaScript. What was that, Simone? Yeah, so if you refresh the page, you should have something on there. What's that? Okay, who did it work for?
It gave me an error.
So if you still have the module.exports equals print name in there, it won't work.
Wait, let me see that. Wait, in say hello?
Yeah, so in say hello, if you have that in there, it won't work. Because you had taken it out, but that's why everyone's having the problems, I think. Because I took it out and it worked for me. I took it out of my bundle.
Well, no, so here I'm gonna copy and paste it just as it was on the original. You come back here, and where was it? Webpack for React. Oh, this is on intro Webpack. So you actually need the module.exports.
I was saying the module.exports equals print name.
Oh, sure. So
that's where I ran into a problem.
Okay, yeah. So all I did here is saying we're just exporting this function directly. What I did before was I named this function print name, and then I exported
print name.
But this. Sorry, what was that? What was your question? Oh, yes, there is. And we're going to do that today. Yeah, so Miriam's question was like, in order for that to work, I just had to run the Webpack command. And you shouldn't have to do that every time, because otherwise that every time you make a change, that would suck. If you make a change, run a command, refresh your browser. That's a super inefficient way to work. So we're gonna use a tool in a little bit. But this process can actually be easier. So Webpack, by default, it always looks for a file called webpack.config.js. So I'm gonna do this over, and I want you to follow along. So I'm gonna delete this. I'm going to delete that file, bundle.js, and I'm going to create a new file. And I'm going to call this webpack.config.js. And that it has to be called webpack.config.js. If it's called anything else, Webpack won't know to look for it. So Webpack, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a configuration. Say, Webpack, every time that you run, I want you to do exactly this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new object that's the configuration. So I'm going to say module.exports equals an object. And I'm going to give it two properties. I'm going to give it an entry call. And the entry is going to be the main.js. I'm going to say, and I'm in the same folder, so I'm going to say main.js. And then the next property is going to be output. I'm going to say, and this is going to be an object. I'm going to say file name. And I want this to be called bundle.js. No, it does not. It is not camel case. I just clicked on here and I just said new file. Okay, does everybody have this? I can post it. I'll post it in Slack too. So this is a very simple configuration file for Webpack. This is a really simple configuration. We can make it more and more complex depending on how, you can make this. You can make the Webpack do lots of things. But right now we're keeping it pretty simple. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come back to the terminal, and instead of running webpack.main.bundle.js, now that the configuration file exists, all I have to do is run Webpack. That's all I have to do. I'm going to run this command, and Webpack is going to look in the folder and says like, hey, is there a file called webpack.config.js? If there is, it's going to use these as the commands to create the file. So I'm going to run this.
I got an error. Yep, same one.
Oh, wait, I have to do dot slash. It's in the same file, yeah.
Dot slash.
Well, good call. What's your name that just spoke up?
Melissa.
Melissa. Okay, thank you, Melissa. Yep, Webpack. And hello. And same thing. So that's what Webpack does. That's Webpack in action. What questions do you have about this so far?
Why is the output an object? Why can't you just define it right there like you did with entry?
Because good question. Let's try something else. Because I might want, there are other options you could do. Like what I could put this in a, here's an example. You guys don't have to follow along for this. Who are they part of vSchool? Because they're bloody loud. Yes, Simone. They're super loud. So the reason it's an object is because you have more options. So I can say var path equals require path. And I can say that I want this to be, I'll say like underscore dir name plus, comma, dist. Thank you, Marcus. So here, what it's going to do is when I run it now, there's more options, and this will actually create a new folder called dist. I think this is right. Let me check. Webpack construct token comma plus is it? It's been I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head. And so now what it did. Oh, their name dist. I said I put this in. Oh, that's what it was. Let me go back. Path plus your name slash dist. Anyway, but you could, if I wanted to put this in a separate folder, then I could. That's why it's an object. you have options to put it in different places. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
Okay. That's just a demo. Okay, but I'm going to delete that. Delete. All right, so let's go ahead. We're going to write our first React component. It's going to be pretty simple. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to close this. I'm going to get rid of this webpack.practice, and I'm going to create a new folder. And I'm going to call it first React component. I'm going to pull it outside of this. Come on. Except I can't.
Well, you're saying to delete Webpack practice?
Yeah, we're gonna start over. We're gonna new folder. Yeah, it's not usually this loud, is it? Yeah. Oh, for real? Man, that is brutal. Okay.
So-
All right.
Can we leave the Webpack practice folder in place and just create a new one on the same level for the first React component?
Yep, that's exactly, yeah. So
Okay.
I created a new folder. I'm going to collapse this Webpack practice. And I'm going to just rename this scrap.js. So right now we're going to repeat this process, but we're going to take this one step further. So we're going to do a lot of the same stuff that we just did. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by installing a bunch of stuff. I'm going to start by installing a bunch of NPM packages. So navigate to the new folder that you just created. So I'm in my new folder. And we're going to install a bunch of node modules. So I'm going to do an npm init. And I'm going to change the name first, React component. And I'm just going to click through all of these. So now I have my package.json. So we're going to install, if you go to this intro to Webpack, we're going to install all of these things that they require. Where is it? So we're going to, if you want to, you can just copy this command. I'm going to type it out so we can talk about each one so we know that what each one does. So I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to npm install --save -dev. So I'm going to install Babel core. So Babel is such a big library that they broke it up into different pieces so that you don't have to install the whole thing. You have your Babel core, and then you can install whatever pieces you need. Because, for instance, if I'm not using TypeScript, I don't need the Babel core. I don't need the Babel loader, or I don't need that part of Babel that does TypeScript. So Babel core is the part that's just the core, and then I'm going to use Babel loader. Babel loader is what actually does a change. So we're going to have a loader, and the loader is that's what does the actual changes. So we have the core that is it knows what to do. Babel loader is what actually takes your code and transforms it. And then we have some Babel presets. So we have Babel preset React. And that is the rules. Like, okay, if we have React code, this is what I do to it. And then we're also going to do Babel preset 2015. What did I just do? Let me make sure that. Yep, Babel core, Babel preset 20. Okay, I added React, but we're going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and install those. Oh, wait, what happened? All right, npm install --save -dev Babel core Babel loader. Sure, yeah, that'd be great. Anyway, for the sake of time, I'm gonna paste in that command. It's gonna take a minute. Sweet. Give me dependency. So I'm gonna come back to my package.json. I've got core, loader, ES 2015. Now I'm also going to I'm going to npm install --dev babel preset React. All right, so now I've got that. And I'm just going to install all of the things that it tells me to do here. The next thing I'm going to install is Webpack Dev Server. So Miriam, just a few minutes ago, she said, like, do you have to run Webpack every time you make a change? And you don't. Webpack Dev Server is a Webpack tool that will, anytime one of your files changes, any of the files that contain your code, it'll automatically update it so you don't have to keep changing it. This will do the work for you. So I'm going to install that. npm install --save -dev webpack dev server. We're installing a bunch of different things right now.
Can you repeat the last one?
Sure, it's this one right here. Just npm install.
When you run your npm installs, why do you add the -dev?
Oh, good point. Because when you it installs it, but if you don't put a dev flag on it, when you go into production, you don't necessarily need it. And you can install just the required dependencies. So this is like, we need our dev dependencies to create our program, but we don't necessarily need it to run the production version.
Okay, so then when they run like an npm install and you've stripped out all the node modules, it won't install the ones you've tagged as dev?
It will. It'll install all of them, but it's just it's mostly a semantic difference. So like over here we have dev dependencies. When we install our regular dependencies, it'll just differentiate between what is used in production and what is used in development.
Okay.
It's a pretty minor thing. Like if we go into our node modules, they're all there. So like we have Babel, we have all these Babel things. Like it gets installed just like a regular node module, but it's just a dev dependency. And honestly, if we didn't do the dev dependency, it would function just fine. So npm install --save -dev -web server. That was the last one we needed. So we're going to go to Webpack for React. So we have our preset for React. We have Webpack and Webpack Dev Server. And we need to install, we're going to install React and React DOM. So React and React DOM are two different things. React is kind of what React builds components, and React DOM is what runs the virtual DOM. So React builds components. Virtual DOM is what puts it on the screen. Does that make sense? If you used React Native, you would use React for components, and React Native would put it on a mobile device. So React can be used for web pages and mobile applications. So it's npm install --save React and React -DOM. Oh, I need to npm install. Let's do this. npm install --save -dev webpack. I forgot to do this one. We have it installed globally, but we need to install it locally as well.
Do you know this stuff by heart? Like every time you start a project, like you know to install all these
Yeah, because I've done it a bunch. Yeah, so I've memorized this, but it seriously took me like, I mean, it took me several times of doing it before I had it memorized. The first time I did this, I was like, holy crap, what is this and this and this and this? Like, and it is what I said. Like I said, getting started with React is not a friendly process. When I got started, I read several times. The biggest complaint for beginners is getting started. Like getting a project up and running kind of sucks. But there are some tools. We're doing it the long and hard way. There are some tools now that make it lickety split and easy, but we're not doing that because I want you to understand what's going on. Miriam. I don't because I like to use a tool called MobX. Okay, side comment. On the fourth night, we're going to start getting into state management. It makes React 3 times easier. Managing data in React kind of sucks, and we're going to do it the long hard way until the fourth night. There's 3 popular state management libraries. The most popular is Redux, but learning Redux is complicated. It's not easy to learn. It's probably the best thing out there. MobX is super quick and easy. And React, there's a library called React Create App or Create React App. You run one command and it does all of this for you. But you can't use MobX when you do that. And I like MobX because I can set something up really fast. Redux takes almost as long to set up as React itself. Anyway, so that's React Create App is good, and a lot of people use it. And if you use Redux, I totally recommend it. Okay, so right now, our package.json should look like this. I'm going to copy this and post it in Slack. So if you're not following along, you can just copy that, paste it into your your package.json, and just run npm install. And all of this also is on these links that I sent you. So if you have any questions, go back and read the site, and it'll have all this stuff for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our webpack.config.json. So I'm going to come here, new file. That's going to be called webpack.config.js, not JSON. All right, I'm going to start quizzing you guys. Module.exports for our config. What is this going to be? Does anybody remember? It's an object. Does anybody remember any of the properties? Oh, exports, thank you. Yep. Does anybody remember any of these? Yep, entry. I'm gonna say output. So we haven't created these yet, so I'm gonna say entry is going to be index.js. And our output is going to be an object, file name, and we're not going to put these in any folders, but I'm just going to say file name is going to be index.bundle.js. And now, because we're converting React now, I'm going to add one more. I'm going to add another one, and this is called module. And this is going to have a property called loaders. And a project can have multiple loaders. So because it's multiple, it's going to be an array. And you don't have to remember this. I'm just talking through it. If you copy and paste this later, this is totally cool. And this is an array, and each loader is going to be an object. So I'm going to say loader, and it's going to be Babel-loader. So we installed all of those Babel things. We installed Babel core, Babel loader, Babel preset, Babel preset. And now I need to do one more. We're going to create another file called .babelrc. And remember, there has to be a dot before it or it won't work. This is just gonna be an object, and it's really simple. We're gonna say presets. And this is gonna be an array. I'm gonna say React, comma, and 2015. So what this is saying, presets, this is JSON. So this has to be in quotation marks. So if you remember, in our package.json, we installed Babel preset ES 2015 and Babel preset React. Those are the configuration presets. So we say, like, when we convert this from JSX into React, put it through these transforms. All right, and we're ready to go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. We're going to call it index.html. Does everybody have Emmet? Do you guys all know about Emmet? Okay, so I'm going to say, I'll just do exclamation mark tab. I'm going to call this first React component. And here I'm going to just say, I want to create a div with an ID of app. Oops. And I'm going to give this a script tag. And the source is going to be index.bundle.js. So this file has not been created yet, but it's going to be created by Webpack and our webpack.config. So now we're going to create our first React component. I'm going to call this index.js. Do I need to slow down? Is everybody at this point? Are we good?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, here. I'll post this in. Okay. So index.js. Okay, so what we're going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import the two libraries. So I'm going to import React with a capital R. Import React from React. Now this is a different syntax, but this is the exact same thing as var React equals require React. It's a different syntax, and I'm going to use it from here on out, because if you ever look at examples online, 95% of the time, this is what it's going to look like. You can do this if you want to, but most examples are going to use the import and export syntax. So now I'm going to import React DOM from React DOM. So, all right. So in React, our components are classes. So, I want to ask, okay, who can explain what a class is in your own words? What's a class? Anybody? Okay, do you guys call them classes or constructor functions?
Has the new class still have a constructor function? Right?
Okay, so I'm not gonna dive too deep into it. All we have to know is we're gonna say class, and we're gonna give it a name. I'm gonna call it class app with a capital A. extends React dot component. And then all I'm going to do is there's no parentheses. It's just curly braces. So this is how we create a component. The ES5 equivalent of this would be function app. That's basically what we're doing, but we're saying because we're extending this, we get all of the properties from React. And if you haven't learned about this yet, this may not make a lot of sense, but as you learn more about classes and constructor functions, one class can inherit properties. So if you have a class that has, let's say person, it has a name, age, hair color, number of limbs, whatever, like you can have maybe a doctor that inherits all of those properties, and maybe you have like, you know, school, years of practice, whatever, and like it can have additional properties. So here we have this generic component, and we're just gonna add things to it. So every React component, it only has to have one thing. I'm gonna say this like 3 times, probably like 10 times. Every React component has to have one thing. It's the only thing it has to have. And that is a render method. So a method, just to make sure you guys know, a method is a function that's attached to a class or to an object. So a method is just a function attached to an object. So normally in constructor functions, you have to say like this dot render equals function. And that's how you typically create methods in ES5. In ES6, it's really simple. As long as you're inside these parentheses, you can just type the name of the method, parentheses, that's it. And that it knows that this is a method. And this is where we're going to put our HTML. So if you guys remember, Angular puts JavaScript into your HTML. React puts HTML into your JavaScript. So this method, all it's going to do is return, and we have to put parentheses around it. There are exceptions, but don't worry about it. Right now, I always want you to put parentheses around your template, and now we can create our template. So I'm just gonna say H1, and oh wait, I'm gonna say H1, I'm gonna type it out. H1. Say hello world. That is our component. That's the whole thing. It's really simple. It's it might seem like a lot of boilerplate, but that's it. So this is actually going to create a component that we could go in and type it like that. And this component represents all of this. So just like you have like H1s or, you know, H2s, it has something like this going on in the background. The last thing that we need to do, well, almost last thing, is this has been the last thing, and then we're gonna take a break. Because I know I'm talking a lot, and I know it's really hard to follow along when I'm just rambling, but the last thing we're gonna do, React, I said this earlier, React creates components, and React DOM puts it on the screen. So we're gonna use React DOM dot render. And this is a function that takes 2 parameters. We're going to pass in the component that this is the component that we created. Oh, thank you. This is the component we created, and now we're going to tell it where to put the component. So we're gonna say document, and this is just regular old JavaScript, document.get element by ID So before we run this, let's go. I want to go back to my HTML. And you can see here, I have a div. And this div is empty. There's nothing there. But my whole application, this could be like Facebook big. It could be a huge, huge monolithic application. But React, this is my whole HTML file. It is going to shove everything, my whole application, into that div. That is my container for everything. Because my React DOM.render is going to, you're going to build up your components and put it all into that one render function. So as long as I didn't make any mistakes, here, I'll go ahead and I'll copy this and put it in Slack as well.
Tanner, you've got document I've misspelled there.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That would be annoying when it, oh, here, wait, let me correct that spelling before I document. Let me, delete message, delete. HTML. Okay, posting it in. Okay, so now you should have the snippet in. All right, so right now, if I run my HTML, like we did earlier, it's going to throw an error and it's going to be a completely empty page. There's nothing there. It's just going to say, hey, there's index.bundle does not exist. So in the terminal, I'm inside of my folder, and I can just run webpack. Oh, can't resolve. Oh, I need to give it a path. I made a correction to my mod into this file. Let's try this again. Psych. Okay. Couldn't find preset. Oh, ES 2015. Okay, so I'm going into my .babelrc file. This seems to be ES 2015. And I'll at the end of the day, I'm gonna compress this and send it to you all so you have the final thing. So let's try this one more time. Hopefully this will work. All right, and if we come back here, we should have our, did it not work? I don't see it. Webpack.
It made it for me.
Did it? I'm not seeing it, but that might just be my, here, let me run an ls. Yeah, so it's there. It's just not, this is why I don't like brackets. I get bugs like this in brackets all the time.
Yep, if you just switch the project and then come back to it, it normally will fix the tree.
I just refreshed it. So now if I come back here and refresh it, boom, hello world. Who followed along and got this? Who followed along and didn't get it? Okay, so everybody else is just watching. Totally cool. Watching is good. Sweet. All right, so if you followed along, raise your hand and I'll come around and help you bug. Let's take a 15-minute break. And when we come back, we're going to start actually making this do something.
Cool.
How do I pause the recording? Stop video. How do I pause it? Stop? Pause share. No. That's not it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I feel like this was boring. There's just so much that
No.
I know, actually, it's not really, but it's gonna get better. I'm gonna start.
And so I got lost on it.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying end result. So go to your
Yes.
supposed to do that next year.
Hey, Eric, are you there?
I'm not. Give me 1 second. I'll be right there. I'm helping Renan.
So first they get command S, and then they just command
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. Oh, you can't drag it. This isn't a Google file that buttons you can't see it. So it's there. So just create a new file. So let's create a create file.
And I'll try to refresh your page to see if it works. If it doesn't work, I'll come back. I'm going to help this. Somebody online had a question.
Yeah, I was following along and I got a little lost on the last example.
Okay.
I understand conceptually what you're saying, though.
Okay, good. Okay, do me a favor. Share. You know what? Who am I talking to?
Jimmy?
Gibby?
Jimmy.
Oh, Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy. Since you're online, can I want to go help Tyreek. Can I use? So you probably have some sort of error. Can I use you as an example to come back so we can all look at whatever errors are popping up together?
Sure.
I'm gonna go help Tyreek and then I'll come back.
All right.
Yes, this is. I'll send you the full file. If you guys get it, if you guys want to. So do create one of your
The other day I was on the
All right, guys. So we're gonna restart in just a minute. It's just so everybody can see. I forgot. You just told me your name. Who's online that had an issue?
Jimmy?
Jimmy. Okay, Jimmy. Can you share your screen? Let me see. I'm going to stop my share. You should be able to start sharing your screen. Okay, cool. So there you are. So I asked Jimmy if it's okay if we look at his errors so that we can all just kind of, if you didn't get an error, we can kind of see potentially some common mistakes. So show us what it looks like in your browser right now.
I got a little lost. I don't think I finished everything.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So open your DevTools. Do it in inspect, right click and go to console. Okay, so it hasn't built the file yet.
Okay.
Okay, so it doesn't exist yet. So go to your console and run the command webpack.
Excuse me?
Run the command webpack.
Web.
And it's going to start telling us. Okay, so here the nice thing about React is that React fails at transpiling time. Angular. So if you guys are well into Angular, you know that Angular fails at runtime. So you can start. How do I turn that off? Was that you? So in Angular, you start using your app and all of a sudden it breaks. And you're like, crap, now I have a bug and I got to go fix it. The nice thing about React is that your code breaks before you run it, which is super nice because you can still get bugs sometimes, but it's going to catch a lot of your bugs before you ever do anything. So here we can see that his issue is in the output file is required. So go to your webpack.config.js. Okay, so you don't have a webpack. So, all right. So yeah, there's a few.
I got lost somewhere in there and I didn't know what was going on.
Oh, okay. So go to Slack. Go to Feb. Yeah. So if you copy, that's not it. Scroll down. Okay, go scroll down. We're gonna look for the web. Oh wait, where is it? Okay, scroll up. Sorry. Oh, that's maybe I didn't post it. Let me post the correct Webpack file for you. You're in Feb.
Yep.
Okay, so I just posted it for you. Copy that and put it in there.
Oops.
And did you already create your Babel RC file?
No. No.
Okay, so your Babel RC file.
Just create one here.
Yep. and it looks like I didn't post that. I thought I posted that. Okay, I'm realizing that I didn't post all the things that I thought I did. So it's gonna be .babelrc.
Dot.
That's the name of the file.
Like this. The bubble RC.
And then I just posted the JSON for that. That little object right there. Copy that and then. Okay, so go to your terminal and run Webpack. So it's working. It's doing. It's thinking.
Yeah. Thinking a lot.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so it has. Okay, and if you look on the left, we now have an index.bundle.js.
Okay.
So I don't know if it works. We will have to go to your index.js so I can check out your code real quick. React, render, hello world, React. That actually, okay. Yeah, so try running your HTML again with open a browser. Hello world, beautiful. Okay, good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you look at my code and see what's wrong with it?
Yeah, sure.
I'll throw it up. Let's see. So on this, when I run it in a terminal.
Okay, you're gonna have to. Someone's vacuuming, so speak up a little bit.
Yeah. So when I run this in the Webpack,
okay,
so I get this error.
Babel first React app index.js unknown option. Okay, go to your index.js file.
So I'm in that right now.
Okay, so import React from React. Import React DOM from React DOM. Class app. So it says that it is. Wait. A common cause of this. Oh, okay. Go to your .babelrc file.
Okay.
Okay, that looks good. React component. Okay, go back to your index.js. Render, return. Oh, okay, it looks like you're, okay, do you see how on line 8 your colors change? Return, oh, no, that looks good. Why? So there's something wrong around line 8, but it looks good. H1.
Yeah, mine's highlighted the same way, so I don't think that's what it is.
Okay, that's a really weird highlighting.
Yeah.
A common cause is Babel users Parker King dev assignments for React. Unknown option React.children. Go to your index.html.
Okay.
That looks good. Do you go to your package.json?
Okay. Saw this.
Okay, you're missing a preset. So run npm install Babel preset React.
npm install
--save
--save, and you said
Babel -preset -react.
preset like that.
Yep.
And if I do Webpack. Okay.
Okay, try refreshing it. Boom. Okay, there you go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so stop sharing your screen and how do I zoom? how do I start sharing again? There we go. Share screen. Desktop to. Okay, can you guys see my screen? And can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, to both.
In class, it's like super, man. Wow, this is brutal. Okay. But for everyone who's still here, I admire your resilience. Man, honestly, I really appreciate LCO's patience. Like, I've listened to people like me like 7 times to try to internalize all this stuff. I hate rambling because I know it's just so boring to just listen to someone ramble and talk about code. So here's what I want to do right now. I want to do a code along. I want to make a little counter, right? I want to have 2 buttons that we're going to start using methods. And so we're going to have one single component where we can click a button and count up and down. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make a little counter. So if you come into this, we're going to do this exercise together. We're not going to make it pretty. We're not going to worry about designing it. Designing is a whole different issue in React. All we're going to do is, what's that? It's going to be functional, not pretty. So it's not going to look like this, but we're going to make a little counter app, okay? So the first thing we want to do is, I'm really sick of typing in Webpack. So I'm going to add a new command, dev server. Okay. So I'll post this in Slack in just a second, but I'm going to add a new command to my package.json. So I'm going to come in here and our package.json allows us to write these really long commands and we can just run one command. So I can run npm start and it will run this. So Webpack dev server is really cool because I can make it work so that every time one of my files changes, it'll automatically pick up it'll recognize that change and it will restart and change my site. So I'm gonna do Webpack dev server -- content base. Let's try this. I'm gonna make sure this is right, and then if this runs correctly, then I'll send it to you guys. So I'm gonna do ls clear. So I'm gonna run npm start, and let's see if it throws any errors. So now, if it works, I should be able to refresh this. And now if I want to come into my index.js, I can say, hello, Tanner, you gorgeous animal. And if I click save, psych, totally not working. Okay, so that did not work. Let me, Oh, you know why? Because I need to go to localhost 8080. We'll go to localhost by default. Okay, so by default, Webpack dev server will serve up your React site to localhost 8080. Boom, there we go. So let me change that again. So hello, Tyree. I don't know how to spell your name. Tyree?
Terry.
What? Oh, Terry? Sorry. Terry. Boom, save. Hello, Terry. Hello, Miriam. Is that right? Miriam? Boom. It automatically just updates it. So, and it goes through all those processes really quick and easy. Okay, so we have this render method, but I want to make this a little bit more, we have 53 minutes. So I want to get through this pretty quick. So React is really cool because, so we make components, right? So right now, our whole application, it's really simple. This is our whole component. It's one component, and it's taking that one component and putting it on the screen. So it's pretty lame right now. All we're doing is displaying text. But in React, we're gonna go here. Don't save. If this is our component, let's just say component, and this is our, that is, man. That's supposed to be a forward slash component. So this is, normally we could write stuff in here, but this is just figurative, right? All of our information in here, in React, you're gonna hear this a lot. So there's a change in the vocabulary that we use, and you will hear more and more. And this does not apply only to React. You'll hear this more and more extending into Angular as well, and coding in general, that your data is what we call state. So state management. What is the state of your data? So in React, and even more and more with Angular and Angular 2, whenever you hear the word state, it means data. So our components can either be smart or dumb. We're gonna worry about smart and dumb components later, but smart components manage their own state. Okay, so this is kind of a big deal. Smart components control their own data. So who's made Angular components here? Okay, so in Angular, Angular started this trend, create your own components. Google recognized, and lots of people recognize, that the future of web development is custom components. So in Angular, it's not emphasized a whole lot. Actually, that's not true. Some companies really emphasize components. But Angular lets you do this. React and Angular 2 focus on this aspect. Angular does a lot of other things. But inside of this component, we're going to manage our own state. So let's go back here. Oh, yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, package. You know what? I'll post the whole package.json again. Yeah, this just means home folder. So you know how we say like dot forward whatever? This just means home folder. That's all that means. So dot is home folder. So we're gonna do this, post this, HTML. Oh no, crap. I'm posting this. I just posted it incorrectly. All right.
So we could just copy that right into our JSON?
Yeah. Yep. So if you go to localhost,
So just for clarification, in the documentation that you're using, instead of a doc, they have source. So I'm assuming that they have a source folder in which they're.
yes. Yeah. If you go through this, you make a source folder. Yeah, all of this is in the source folder. It should be anyway. Source. Yeah, so if you go up, it says you're going to make a source folder.
So we're replacing that source with a dot, which is just saying the name.
Yes, that's sourcing. We don't have any nested. Everything right now is in the root. Your root is just your highest level folder. So right now, everything is in the root, so we're just keeping it there.
So
after we, sorry, go ahead.
I've got it all input, but when I go to 8080, there's nothing there.
Did you run npm start?
npm start in the terminal?
Yeah.
I did not. Just start, the word start, no file name or anything?
No, yeah, you have to run. So I'll run it again. So I'm going to press command. I'm going to clear that out. Oh, clear. And I'm going to run npm start. And what that does, this goes to what npm start will go to my package.json and look for a script called start. And it's going to run whatever. So this right here is what I wrote right here. So npm, it's going to run this. If I ran,
I get a bunch of errors when I run npm start.
Did you install Webpack Dev Server?
I believe so.
Do an npm install just to make sure that you have everything installed, and then try it again.
Mine's giving an error. It says cannot get, and then just a slash.
Let's come back. Does everybody, for everyone who's following, where's Marcus?
No, I just have to say, this is so festive. Like,
See, I want to turn it down. Like, hey, is that just his music? Could you ask him to? Hey, thank you. Who's following along and does not have that command working? Does everybody else who's in class have it working? npm.
I had it working until I copy and pasted the JSON snippet. Everything was working fine. Yeah, and I had dev server and Webpack installed in my JSON.
Okay. Okay, I'll tell you what, let's move forward, and before I leave tonight, I'll make sure that we have it working for you.
All right.
So that means that you might not have it working until the very end, but I'll stick around a little after to make sure that you got it working. Okay, so we're going to use a little bit of a different syntax here. So in constructor functions, usually the whole function is a constructor. So I'll give you an example. If this constructor function, if that class were just a function, it would look like function app equals, function, and then we don't have any parameters right now, right? But if it were name, then we'd say this dot name equals name, right? So here, in this syntax, we actually are going to say constructor, and we actually make it a method. So the equivalent here, this would be like if we said name, this dot name equals name. So it is a different syntax, but this is how we're going to start putting state into our component. So I'm not going to talk about props right now, but to get started, to start putting data into our component, we're going to create a constructor method. You can see that this is the same syntax as our render method. So we're going to say constructor, and you don't have to know what this means right now. We're going to say props, and then we're going to say super props. And now we can say this dot state equals an object. So you don't have to worry about too much what this is right now, but this is the important part. This dot state, if you remember this little thing, state equals data. So here we're saying that the data inside this component is an object. And here I'm going to say count equals, let's just start with 0. So I'm going to repeat this again. This dot state is going to be the data that is inside of this component. So let's come down here and delete the text that's in here. So if this were an Angular app, we would bind data into our HTML with double curly braces, right? So if we had like, let's just pretend that we had a variable called, you know, scope.name. Down here, we would just put name. The way that we do this in React is anytime that we want to put JavaScript inside of our template, we use single curly braces. And now we can say this dot state dot count. So what I'm doing here is in my constructor, I'm creating some data. So this dot state is an object, and I'm giving it a property count. And now we have this dot state, and I'm injecting that information into this template. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is everybody in Angular so far? Is the February class working in? Oh,
I think so.
oh man. So this doesn't make any sense to you guys, does it? Oh man, if this doesn't make any sense, oh crap. This is like,
By
We just figured out tomorrow we will
By
be coming out.
Wednesday, they'll have built their first Angular app using two-way data binding.
oh good.
They'll get familiar with
Okay. Okay, if this doesn't make any sense to you, let me just tell you, like, I've written applications in straight up vanilla JavaScript. You might not appreciate it right now, okay? I just want, like, okay, here's what you might be thinking. And here's what I'm afraid you're thinking. This sucks. Why am I, like, this is so complicated. Why am I doing this, right? So earlier today, I had a conversation with a coworker, and it went like this. Man, these new tools are so amazing. I love them. But configuring them is almost harder than developing the application. Like getting getting React to work is almost harder than actually programming in React. So my point is, like, I know this sucks, but you have to understand that right now, if you haven't programmed before, like, all I can say is, like, this becomes 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 times easier than if you were using just straight up vanilla JavaScript. Go try to write a to-do app in vanilla JavaScript. Yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways to do it, but you have to know about every piece of data that's on your screen. Like, you want to re-render a list, well, delete the whole old list and loop through it and add all the new ones, right? Or you have to, like, add append child. There's a bunch of different ways, right? Actually, appending children is great, but here you don't have to worry about it. So jQuery is beautiful. Like,
Yeah, I think everybody's almost done.
yeah.
basically here, what's happening is instead of having to say document get element H1 content equals this, we just need to say, hey, we saved this variable.
Inject it straight in there. So we're binding that stuff right into there. So I forgot that I was told that this might be a mixed class, but chances are when you guys, I'm probably going to come back and do this at the end of your course, and a lot of this is going to make a lot more sense.
When Bob shows you Angular, he'll go to an input box on the screen and he'll type his name in and he'll immediately display in the H1 as he's typing.
So are you suggesting that we don't continue?
No, absolutely not.
No, I mean, if you were coming back to do it again.
There's no guarantee I'm going to come back, because, like, I live like over an hour away. I enjoy coming up here, but I'm not making any money. I really like vSchool. Like, I don't know if I'm going to tell you, here's my little pitch. You guys are already here, so you guys are already invested. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. There's a lot of good schools. vSchool is not the only good school. Like, vSchool is not the only good school. You could have gone to Mountain, you could have gone to Hack Reactor, but I've worked with a lot of people, and honestly, like, you may not see it, but I've worked with people from other schools, and, like, people at vSchool actually do care about you. I don't know, you may not know what's going on behind the scenes, but, like, they talk about you. I get to see it. They're like, man, so-and-so's doing really good. So-and-so's like, what? And they're like, what can we do? My point is, I really like vSchool. The people here are really good. And I really like, I love working with Eric and Bob. So it's my pleasure to be here. My point, so.
Oh, we did.
Okay. I know, actually, I used to tell people when I interview them, like, if your life isn't hell during V school, you're not doing V school right. Like, and so I hope your V, like, it sucks. But I promise you, anyway, that's my pep talk. Yeah. And honestly, like, we're talking. Yeah.
So you get it.
Yeah. And Angular, when you start, for you guys who haven't done Angular, when you start doing Angular, you're either gonna be so happy and so relieved, or you're gonna bang your head against your desk because, like, why the crap did I do all this stuff for? Yeah. Yeah. No, directives are components. Anyway, well, actually, no. Anyway, let's move on. So, okay. So let's look what happened, guys. We have this constructor, and we say this.state.count equals 0, and it bound directly in here. So I'm going to change this to 1. I'm going to save it, and it comes over here, and it's going to change. So, like, we can see so here's what you need to take away right now. This information is being bound right here, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and add a button right here. I don't have Emmet working, so I have to type it out. Button.
It seems that it doesn't work in this file type.
Oh, you know why? Because I have this as JavaScript. I need to change this to JSX. If you want to, you can come into your plugins and go to your available plugins and type in JSX. I did this earlier. And you can see here that this has React language mode for brackets. You can install it. But then you have to come down here and tell it that this is a JSX file. And then you can do button, maybe not. But again, I don't like brackets. I always use Visual Studio Code or WebStorm. Okay, so here I created a button, and okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do a bunch of things wrong, and I'm gonna make it, just FYI, I'm gonna make a mistake and then correct it. Make a mistake and then correct it, so you guys can see. So right now, I added this button, right? And so I'm gonna come back over here, and it's gonna, and look, it broke. So I'm gonna use my DevTools, and it's gonna tell me that these two elements, they have to be wrapped in an enclosing tag. So this render method, you have to have a render method. I'm gonna repeat this. Every component has to have a render method, and it has to return some JSX, but it can only return one parent element. So I'm gonna wrap this in a div. And so now, because this can only return one single element, it can have as many children elements inside of it as you want. Like, you can put thousands of lines of code, but ultimately it has to return one thing. Does that make sense? So now that I wrapped it in that div, I'll come back over here. And it's refreshing, it's transpiling. And look, now I've got my little button, but it doesn't do anything, right? So I'm gonna create a new method. And look at this, here's the thing. All of this is going on inside of one single component. This is my class, this is my component. And this is a smart component. I know it's a smart component because it manages its own state. It's managing its own data, but I want to change it. So to do that, I'm going to create a new method inside of this component. I do that by all I have to do. I don't have to type function or anything like that, or this dot whatever. All I have to do is type the name of it. So I'm going to call this increment. And then I'm going to put my parentheses and then that, and then my curly braces. So all I want to do is say, I want to increment this, right? So I'm going to do this wrong on purpose. So I'm going to say this dot state. You guys know plus equals 1, right? That's the same thing as saying this dot state. Oh, sorry, this dot state dot count plus equals 1. That's the same as saying plus plus, or saying this dot state dot count equals this dot state dot count plus 1. That's 3 different ways of doing the same thing. Does that make sense? So I want to say this dot state dot count plus equals 1. And then let's watch this. So I'm going to console.log this dot state dot count. Okay, so I'm going to come back here. I'm going to refresh the page. Now look what's going to happen. Okay, guys, I'm going to press this button. Oh, wait. I need to do it. I need to bind this, right? So I'm going to do it on click. Now, this is important. Typically in HTML, this is all lowercase. React does a few things differently. In React, this is camel cased. On click equals. Now I'm going to pass in some JavaScript here, right? I'm going to say on click equals that, this dot increment. Okay, so hang on to your seats. I want to talk about some really funkiness, right? So I'm going to refresh the page, and I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to get an error. It says it can't read the property state of null. Because, so here's some weirdness. Okay, so the DOM is what? It's an object, right? Have you guys talked about this? What is this in JavaScript? So every object and every function has its own this inside of it, right? So here's what's going on. This button is rendered on the screen, and what does it become? An object. It becomes its own object with its own this. So I'm saying this dot increment. But here's the problem. I want it to use this. I want it to use the increment that's bound to this class. So I have to get this button, which is an object, to reach back outside and grab this, okay? And the way I do that is I can say this dot increment dot bind this. There is another way to do it. There's like 5 ways to do this, but this is probably one of the simplest ways to do it. It's kind of some funkiness, but now when we do it, now when I click on this, it should run this method. So we should see in the console this dot state dot count. We're starting at 1. So we're going to see 2, 3, 4, 5. But this isn't working. And there's a reason, and there's a good reason for it. So when we talked about React earlier, we talked about this cycle, right? We have this cycle where I click on a button, it sends out an event. That event, triggers, we're going to change some data, right? But then, so our data changed, but React uses the virtual DOM. We have to say, hey, our data changed, go see what's different, and then change whatever is different. Here's our UI, right? So the last part we're missing here is we have to say, hey, compare our old data to our new data. That's OD, I can't. Bob's really good at writing on this. It's not very easy. But we have to force the virtual DOM to do its business. So here's the way we do it. There is every function. So you got that whole thing where we extended the, whole thing where we extended this super props, React.component has a whole bunch of tools built into it. So now we can use that. So we're going to say this dot set state. You know what? I'm going to do this the proper way. I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to say let count equal this dot count plus 1. In general, it's a bad idea to change this. You never want to actually change this like this. You want to create, the only way you should change your state is by using this dot set state. So I'm saying this dot set state, and I'm going to mutate this. So I'm going to grab this property. I'm going to pass in an object. I say count, and I'm going to assign this new variable. I'll call this new count. New count. New count. So here's what happened. Whenever you run this dot set state, I don't know. This says, hey, React, we are changing our state. That means we are changing our data. Our virtual DOM is changing. Run that comparison and make any changes you need to make. And so this dot state, you can pass in any, like, let's say that we can have a whole bunch of other things. Let's say like age, whatever, like, it doesn't really matter. We have to be numbers, right? So like, you know, you can have a bunch of other properties on here, and this will only change whatever you tell it to. So I can say, I can change count, and it won't change anything else. So you're only going to set state on whatever you're changing, and you don't have to worry about other data. So now this has changed. Now I can come back here, and now we're completing that full cycle. This is one single component, and we're completing the full cycle. We're clicking on the button. It's running a function. It's changing our data. It's comparing. This is really, really poorly written. That's an A. It's running the virtual DOM, and it's updating our UI. That's the full cycle. Does that make sense? A little bit? Okay, let's repeat this process. All right, so I'm going to add a new button. Actually, I'm just going to duplicate this line. And I'm going to delete this. Over here, so now we have two buttons. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys. So for this next one, actually, do I have a volunteer who can come up here and try to duplicate this so we can go down? Miriam, you seem pretty confident. Okay, but as you do it, I want you to talk about what you're doing. Okay.
Sure.
So you can explain it from your perspective.
Okay, so we have is this the mouse?
Yeah. Just move, yeah. And if you want to go back, you take 3 fingers and just swipe.
The technology at the teacher desk gets crazier and crazier. Okay, so we have, do you want me to start with a button, I guess? So we have a button which is calling an increment function. So we're probably going to want a button that's going to call some kind of reduction. So I'm just going to match the plus to the minus. And then we have an increment function. So I would think to add a decrement function.
Yep. Well, so it's actually, technically it's a method. It is a function.
Method.
But it's a method. It's a
because it's in
a class. So yeah. So this is a method. It is a function, but because this function is attached to an object, this is bound to this class, we call it a method. So if we say like, dot split, dot reverse, dot join, whatever, those are all methods to arrays and strings.
So I would basically build the decrement method to match the increment method. This is a funky keyboard. Pretty much exactly, except what do I do here? -1.
Yeah. So what you're doing is you are creating that new value and storing it in a new variable.
Would you still call it?
Yeah, you can call it, yeah. Because that function, when it runs, it's going to create that data, and then when it's done running, it's going to destroy it. Because it's inside the function, it's going to be created and destroyed during the life cycle of its execution. It's going to run the function, create what it needs to, destroy what it needs to.
So just like any function you would run in plain JavaScript, the global versus local nature of this variable, right?
Yes.
Inside the function, it will only exist within the function.
That is exactly right.
So now that we have the decrement method set to minus, then the this.set state will be exactly the same as the previous this.set state because we're updating the same variable from the state. And then we can just go ahead and add that method to the button.
So here's a question. Why do you have to put, so why is she putting curly braces? What's the purpose of those curly braces? What's that? Yeah, but, yeah, those curly braces mean that she's going to put some JavaScript in there.
So just like with the increment, we have to bind it to the this, which is the state. We do the same with the decrement.
Yeah, beautiful. So swipe left and let's try it out. So you can see that it refreshed and the value reset. So boom, plus, minus. Man, are you guys not excited? I love this kind of job, man. Like, if there's what? Oh, it's not working yet. So I'm gonna compress this and send it to you guys so you can look at it later.
Am I done?
Yeah,
Here?
yeah.
Do you want me to keep working here?
Oh man, you can do whatever you want. Yeah. Okay. Man, that is beautiful. Good job, guys. That was okay. So I want. Good job, Miriam. So this syntax is probably pretty different. For you guys who just started in February, this is probably like, what the crap? For you guys who have done some Angular, you can see there's some carryover, like binding data using curly braces and things like that. Like that's some new stuff. But this does function pretty differently. And do you guys have any questions about this? If you have questions, it's total. Everybody else probably has the same question.
My only question is why we have like age and name and stuff added now in this dot state.
Oh, so the reason I added those were, I'll show you. So because when you do this dot set state, you pass in an object, and that object. The object is the values that you want. Oh, sorry. The value that you want to update. So this is going to be this.state.count, and the property that you want to update, and the new value. And I put these new properties so that you can see that this is not altering those other things. So I could come in here and do h1. Pass in this.state.name, and I can see just whenever that function runs, it doesn't affect any other data.
Cool.
That's the only reason I put it there.
Awesome.
So what I want to do is I want to take this one step further.
Wait, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
If we install a plugin for JSX, like language definitions or whatever, do we save this index.js file as a .jsx file then?
You don't have to. We'll talk. Yeah. So if you do, so let me rename this file. index.jsx. If you do that, you have to make sure that you come in here and change this to index.jsx.
I see. Is it like best practice to save it as .jsx or does it make a difference?
Most people do .js, and here's the reason why. I left out some other properties here. I'll go ahead and talk about this. Inside my loaders, I'm going to give it test, and I'm going to pass in, this is a regular expression. Who knows what regular expressions are?
They're like strings to replace or matching it.
Yeah, so regular expressions are, you don't have to worry about them right now, but they're a really useful tool. And so here's what this means is this is saying test. Oh wait, I did this wrong. This is a regular expression that means only use files that end in .js. So only do files that end in .js. But I also want to, I don't want to do that to my node modules. So I'm going to exclude, this is a regular expression, node modules. And so by doing this, you can, but you don't have to use the extension. I have found most people do not use the JSX ending.
I see.
But you absolutely can. If I were using brackets, I would do this because brackets does not automatically recognize that I'm using JSX. If I was using WebStorm, WebStorm would say, "Hey, you're using JSX. I'm going to change how I handle this file." That's why WebStorm is amazing. If I were using Visual Studio Code, I could also just say, for this whole project, treat all my JS files as JSX files. You can probably do that in brackets too, but those two tools make it better, easier. So now I'm going, by doing that, I'm only going to transpile JS files, and I'm also not going to, I can avoid doing that to any of my node modules because I've got a whole bunch of node modules, and I don't want to have to transpile. That's a lot of computation. I don't want to worry about it. So I'm just going to use the regular node module. But real quick, I want to take this one step further. You guys don't have to follow along, but I'm going, right now I have this index.js, and I have this app. I'm going to copy and paste, I'm going to copy this whole thing, and I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this capital C counter.js. I'm going to paste it in here, and I'm going to call this counter. I'm going to get rid of this. And do you guys remember how before we did module.exports? Module.exports equals. And whenever we said module.exports equals whatever, that means, hey, I can send all of this code somewhere else, and they can use it, right? Another way of doing this in ES6 is export default. So I'm going to say export default this class called counter. And now I can, in React, every class should be in its own file. I shouldn't have one class in with another. So now I can go back to my index.js. I'm going to delete all of this logic here. I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to import my other component. So I'm going to import counter from, and I'm going to give it the path to it. So it's all in the root right now. Counter, actually I don't need to, I can just say dot counter, just counter. What's usually more common is I'll create a folder called components. And I'll take this counter, and I can't do it. Let me see. I've got to go to my Finder to do that. So do that. And I'm going to take counter. I'm going to drop it into components. So now I'm going to say the path is going to say components / counter. And now I can just use counter and close it. So look. What's that? Yes. Thank you. Good eye. I appreciate that. Thank you. Don't be. Nah, some people, I've had people who are like afraid to correct me, and it saves time. Thank you. But look, something like, look, there's really no difference between that and H1. Like, it's an HTML element. It's a component that I just made. I made it, I imported it, and I can use it. That's what React does. This right here is the beauty of React. It took a long time to do it, but once we understand this process, I can create components and I can just throw them in there. Like I create a component, I can make them as niche, I can make whole pages that are components, or I can make little buttons that are components. How would I make it look good? With there's a few different ways. So I'm gonna refresh this just so you can see that. Oh wait, unexpected token 9. Wait, I broke this. 1 second. Oh no, I didn't. Okay, so it's good now. But you can see that everything still works. Okay, so we have 10 more minutes. So Titus asked a good question. I don't want to worry about styling components in React is pretty different. And there are lots of different ways to do it. If you want to, you can use a style sheet. You can use typically what's more common is, this is really different, and I don't want to get really into it, but I'll go through it real fast. Sure, no. So here's what I do. I want to say because every component should be independent. So it's going to have its styles built into it. It's pretty different. So we're going to say let styles equal this object. And let's say like button style. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start using CSS properties, but instead of using like camel casing, or instead of using like dashes and stuff, if any dashes are going to become camel cased. So let's say this is going to have a background color, and it has to, and I have to use a string. In normal CSS, I could just type like red, but because this is going to be an object, I'm going to say like light blue. And let's say it's going to have a margin of, so this is going to be just like an object, right? So if it's a string, it has to be in quotation marks. In React object styles, if I just say like 10, it automatically assumes pixels. If I want to say like M's, I have to say like 2M. Or if I say like percents, I would say like 2%. But if I just throw in a number, it assumes that I mean pixels. So then I can come down on these buttons. Oops. And I'm going to say style equals, and now look, I'm passing in a JavaScript object, right? So I'm going to say styles dot button style. So, and this is a pretty big departure from regular web development, because usually we do a style sheet there, like, you know, main.css or styles.css. So this is a big departure from how we style that. So if I come back here, refresh it, now I got these cool little buttons.
That would just be so much more complicated. Like to make a whole website flow, because you're literally styling sensitive.
So yes and no. It does. It is a change. But think about it this way. Think of a mobile application. In mobile application, so this is, let me put it this way: mobile application and desktop application, desktop software and mobile apps have been far ahead of web development. The tools and the style for development in a lot of ways has been better than the tools and methods that we've had for web development. That's an opinion, and that's not entirely true, but there is truth to it. And if you research it, people will say that. But if you look at mobile applications, they use component design. So each component is actually styled independently from everything else. And here's what's cool is this makes these components completely reusable. So let's wrap this in a div. Oh. Div. And I can reuse it, and like, let's refresh this. And now each of these is its own independent component. So you can, and we're going to talk about next time, like you can pass data into them. And so like, look, we just made a reusable component. Let's imagine this were like a form, like an entry form or something. Maybe you want to have a to-do list on your website and you want to put that to-do list on every page. You could just put like a little, this counter could be maybe in the corner of your page, you're going to have a to-do list component. You're just going to throw it up there and that is now completely independently styled and functions completely on its own. So in some ways, this is actually kind of catching up with components based development is catching web development up to more modern techniques. So modern desktop software, Slack, Skype, whatever, uses components. Your mobile applications, your Android, iOS, Windows, component based. And this is really, if you've heard of React, Vue.js, Angular 2 scraps 90% of Angular 1 and goes completely component based. Yep. This React and Angular 2 is closer to React than it is to Angular 1. Angular 1 is still hugely in demand. The other day I did a comparison, like job search. There's still more Angular jobs out there, but React is growing really fast. I'm gonna undo some of the stuff I did. But anyway, this is for you guys who are just getting started. You don't need to worry too much about this, but eventually you're going to get to directives and creating your own directives, and you're gonna be like, "Whoa, Angular 1 has its own way of doing this exact same thing." You guys who are in the more advanced class, more progressed class, you guys know how to do this already. Angular 1 has its own way of doing it. The people at Angular have I've read articles that say the designers of Angular 1 actually intended Angular to be more directive based, more component based. It has so many other features that it wasn't really emphasized. I interviewed with some companies who were like, we are crazy about directives. And they asked me like super intense component directive questions. Anyway, I'm saying my whole point is, whether it's React, Vue, Angular, this is our future as professionals. Like we're going to be moving more and more towards this. And what's super cool, like Miriam and Jay over here, they're working on an Ionic app. I published an application using React Native. Once you know React, it is a small jump to make mobile applications. And what's cool about that is the Ionic was revolutionary in its time, but React Native, and there's another library called NativeScript. NativeScript is based on Angular 2. They're a huge improvement on former JavaScript-based mobile applications. Then the user interface is completely native. Anyway, you don't need to worry about that right now. All I'm trying to say is React is super cool, and Angular 2 is super cool because you can make mobile applications as well as web applications. Anyway, so it's almost 9 o'clock. I hope you guys like this and appreciate it. I'm going to stick around. If anybody has questions, I'll help you troubleshoot. I know Jimmy, I think it was Jimmy, had some issues running. Couldn't get it running. I'm going to compress this whole thing and send it to you guys. But if you want to get it running right now, just give me time so I can get with you guys one-on-one, all right?
Jimmy's okay.
Jimmy's okay?
No, it was me that had issues, but I got it fixed and caught up, and now I'm all set.
All right, awesome. Okay, cool. In that case, Melissa, Jimmy, I don't know everybody else who's online. Aaron, Brennan. Oh, Brennan, you're right here. Jamie.
That's Jimmy.
Oh, Jimmy?
Yeah, my real name's Jaime, but I go by Jimmy.
Oh, Jaime?
Yeah.
¿Habla español?
Yeah, yo hablo español.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes a lot of people will say Hyman. That's why I don't go by Jaime.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, sure. Cool, man. Now, my background's in linguistics. Estoy siempre aprendiendo español.
Ah, okay. Muy bueno.
Cool, man. All right, cool, guys. Yeah, I will see you guys Wednesday night.
All right, thank you so much.
Yep, see you guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Hold on. Oh, there it is.